Hello and welcome back to the channel. Hey, I'm Ron with Ideal Industries, and in this segment, let's talk about speaker wire here. One of my favorite subjects, and one of the reasons it's one of my favorite subjects, because there's a bunch of crap going on here with speaker wire, and you can go out and spend a lot of money in speaker wire if you care to, and whether or not it's going to make that sound system sound any good is the big question. And I'm going to tell you the truth about speaker wire is that as long as that gauge of this cable handles the amperage of wattage of your system, it really doesn't matter what kind of wire it is, as far as copper cabling, as far as stuff like that. And you can spend, again, a lot of money. And if you want to know some of the differences in some of these high-end cables, hang on to the end of this thing, and I'll give you some differences between some of those high-end cables. And you're going to find out there's not a ton. And when I look at speaker wire, we can look, how would we compare it? And one of the reasons why there's a bunch of crap going on out there in speaker wire is the fact that there are no standards in speaker wires. And, there is no real need, because about any wire actually does work. So there are no standards. And so when I look at speaker wire, let's look at how UL looks at that wire. And UL basically is going to look at that wire, or the NEC, and say, okay, we want wire that's designed to go outside of walls, and we want wire that goes inside of walls, okay? And so when I look at this wire that's designed to go outside of walls, it's that lamp cord looking stuff. Usually one conductor is 10, so you can tell the difference, positive and negative kind of thing for your speakers. And when I look at wire like this, it's really not to go behind walls. And it's what we refer to as UL miscellaneous speaker wire. Normally it's stranded, because we want that stranding in the cable, which makes it more flexible, because we're trying to height this wire along a baseboard, or bending it around a corner, whatever it might be. And so we want a nice flexible cable for this, but it's not designed to go behind walls. And if you look real close on the packaging, and normally you got to look real close and real small lettering, it's going to say that it's for indoor use only and not designed to go behind walls. Okay? And the reason we don't want this in a wall is because the way it burns in a fire is very naturally. It burns very readily. It gives off lots of toxic smoke and dense smoke, and obviously that's not what we want burning in the walls. We want to go out and buy in-wall rated wire, okay? And normally on the packaging someplace it says it's in-wall, and normally you can tell it is because it'll have conductors in it in their own installation, and then there's an outer jacketing on the outside of that. And so that's generally referred to as in-wall. Now, this is the type of wire we're going to use to run through the home theater systems and the distributor audios and those intercom systems and things like that. It normally is solid conductor, not stranded. And the reason is because in many cases we don't need the stranding or the flexibility of the cable, and or the cost in stranded. So solid works just fine here. Now, if the wire packaging on the wire doesn't stand out and say, oh, I'm in-wall rated wire, how can you kind of tell by looking at the cable? Well, UL requires them to print every couple feet what the wire actually is. And so if I look a little down on here and look at the printing on the cable, right here it says the cable is CL3R, meaning it's class 3, and it's riser rated type cable, okay? Now, UL has these classifications for, all your sound and security cable, your thermostat wire is all covered by these classifications, and this is class 1, 2, and 3. Now, class 1 is a little overkill for us. We don't need it for these applications, and usually don't use it because it's more money, but it's rated up to 600 volts in rating, and normally used in these to supply power for these power limited type circuits. And class 2 and 3 is fine for our applications, and class 2 will go up to 150 volts, class 3 basically up to 300 volts in rating, and those are the cables that we end up generally using. Now, so if I see class 3 or class 2, I know that's an in-wall rated cable. It's what we call general purpose type wire, and general purpose wire can be ran horizontally and vertically behind walls in single family and two family type dwelling type units. And the idea is we don't want to go vertically through the building and through like an apartment complex or a high-rise apartment or something like this. We're going through floor to floor to floor with general purpose wire. It's fine for if we keep it limited, so to speak. And this wire comes either 18 gauge at a minimum for speaker applications up to 14 gauge. And anything over 14 gauge is really kind of considered overkill by the industry. And you'll find also, too, a lot of the volume controls and other little devices you're going to hook up together with this thing won't really take anything more than 14 gauge. So if they want that bigger wire, they're just spending money for no reason, pretty much. So 18 to 14 gauge is all you kind of need. Now, if you need to go through maybe an apartment complex or more of a commercial job, you might look into riser rated, and the job might be calling out riser rated cable. And that is a wire that can go vertically through a building, and it doesn't burn as nastily as general purpose cable. It puts off even less smoke and is less flammable than, again, general purpose cable. Now, the next and the highest rung is plenum rated wire, and you can put plenum rated wire anywhere you want in a building. And if you spent 2 to 3 times the price you normally pay on wire, you might have picked up a roll of that plenum rated stuff. And it'll say CL3 or 2P on the end of it. And plenum rated wire is where we're going to run wire through any part of the heating and air conditioning system in that building, or through what we call an air plenum. In a lot of commercial jobs, those drop ceilings above in those buildings are part of the heating and air conditioning system, or part of an air plenum. So that's where we would use plenum rated wire. Now, plenum rated, this has a lot to do with the insulation, how it burns in a fire. It really has nothing to do with the quality of the sound you're going to get coming out of these out of the speakers. Okay, so how's another way of these manufacturers distinguish themselves as I'm got a better wire than you've got a better wire than somebody else? And one way of doing that is to look at the purity of the copper in the cabling as well. Now, when they go out and they mine copper out of the ground, they get a lot of impurities, and through that whole process, they've got to get all the impurities out of the copper. They basically melt it down, anneal that through an annealing process, and they try to get all the impurities out of the copper. Now, general purpose wire, and that's what this speaker wire here is made out of. That's what this speaker wire here is made out of. That's what this category cabling and panel is made out of. Even the leads on this little tester in front of me are what we call general purpose cable. General purpose cable is what we call 99.9% pure copper. It's pretty pure, not 100%, but it's close. Okay, and so all wire is basically general purpose. Okay, again, Romex, all of it. And so the next rung up on this ladder on this tough pitch copper rating is to go to a premium wire. Now, you can call it a premium copper cable and sell it as such if you're 99.95% or better pure copper. Okay, and those are cables we'll sell as premium wires, put a nice fancy jacketing on the outside of it, and sell it to those discriminating listeners out there who want a little bit better quality wire for better sound coming out of their speakers. Okay, and of course those are the guys we'll sell the gold-plated connectors to too. Okay, now the next rung up above that is what we call oxygen-free wire. Now, oxygen-free does not mean it was made inside of a vacuum. What that means is they through that annealing process, there's even little bubbles or pockets of air left over inside this copper, and we can call it an oxygen-free cable if it's 99.99% pure copper. Now, and you can even go beyond that if you care to. Now, and that wire, by the way, gets very, very expensive. And the real question becomes is, can your ear hear the difference between 99.9 and 99.95 or better pure copper? And you're going to find out that's no, you're not going to. So the wire has actually not a heck of a lot to do with the quality of the sound coming out. I mean, copper pretty much is copper, I guess is what I'm trying to tell you. Although, could you maybe see a deflection in a meter? Maybe. But the real question is, could you hear the difference? And you know what? Most of us can't hear with a crap anyway. So in most cases, no, it's not going to make any difference. Okay. Now, the standards also kind of support this in a way. And, if you look at the residential standard, which is called the 570B, it tells you how to wire it home properly for all those low voltage things. One of the things it talks about is speaker wire. And it gives us a loss budget on how long we can run our wires and things like that on speaker wire. Now, this chart inside the residential standard, when you look at it, it looks at 4 and 8 ohm speakers, and we're normally working with 8 ohm speakers in these home audio setups. And it's also showing us, 14, 16 gauge wire. So according to the standard, 14, 16 is all you need. Okay, and this chart's telling you that a 16 gauge wire can be ran 120 feet. And on an 8 ohm speaker, you're going to lose about a half a dB of power in that 120 foot length of cable. Now, you know what? You're not going to hear that. Humans can hear roughly 1 to 2 dB up and down is about our range. And you know what? You're not going to hear this loss. And matter of fact, we're talking sound there, not power, but you can run this wire of 16 gauge almost 1,000 feet, lose 3 dB of power. Now, you're definitely going to hear this difference, but you can make it up with the volume control in the room, so it's not a huge difference. So you're going to find out the wire doesn't have a ton to do with this as far as the length of that cable. You can run pretty far lengths with it. And so, I question charts like this. Anytime I see stuff like this, I'm going, okay, who wrote that, And when I find out, hey, this is part of a standard. And so if it's part of a standard, that means a bunch of engineers had to say okay to these numbers, okay? So you can probably trust what the darn standard's telling you. And then secondly, when I do a little more research, I find out that this chart is based on up to a 1,000-watt system. And how many of us have more than a 1,000-watt system? Really not many, probably. And then lastly, this chart is based on the fact that the load an amp sees. And when an amp is driving a speaker, part of the load is the speaker, and part of it is the wire that feeds that speaker. Now, if you've ever taken a coil out of a speaker and taken it apart, you're going to find out there's a whole bunch of wire in this coil, sometimes hundreds, if not thousands of feet in these coils. So the load the amp sees, 90% of it is the speaker. That run of wire out to it is pretty short compared to the wire in the speaker, and it's considered 10%. So this chart is based on the fact that the load amp sees, only 10% of it is wire. And so it's somewhat negligible, okay? And so the truth about speaker wire is that, again, as long as the gauge of the wire handles the amperage or wattage system, it really doesn't matter what it is. And, if you're going to put the speakers outside for them little rock speakers or something, that landscape lighting wire would work fine for that, because that's where it's designed to go. So that's the truth about speaker wire. I hope it helped you. I'm Ron with Ideal Industries, and I'll plan on seeing you the next time.